Thank you. Thank you and good afternoon. They told me to stand still so that I could fight the fear of public speaking, and surprisingly, I will be talking about fear the entire time today. So 2 years ago, I started a diary. I started to keep a diary to deal with the emotions of fear, as people would do. It was and it is the main confidant, the pages of my diary. It's something that I talk to in full, complete honesty. This is why I decided to bring the pages and the entries of my diary today here to the conference called Honest Answers. Little did I know 2 years ago that my diary will one day become a historical document, and my life will get so intertwined with politics. As a researcher, I'm used to digging into other people's notes and diaries and speeches and other discursive materials. But this is for the first time that I'm looking at my own notes through the prism of a researcher, and I'm embarking on this outer ethnographic journey in order to make sense of not only what happened to me, but what happened to my country, Russia, over the past 2 years. Where am I now? Well, at the moment, I research and I teach sociology and politics at King's College in London. In my other hat, I am carrying out public projects in Russia, and all of them have something to do with education, social sciences, and higher education, inquiries into society. The mission that unites everything that I do is, again, the development of and production of knowledge about the society, not only in Russia, but in general. How do I feel myself? I feel myself 100% Russian, and I feel myself 100% a Londoner. And funny thing that I started to realize myself as a Londoner only after the pandemic, because, you know, as they say it in wedding vows, in health and in sickness. So it was the sickness that united me and the community and the people of London. That the sickness made me feel at home there. Where were I before? So, 10 years ago, straight out of Oxford, I flew back to Moscow, to my hometown, because I landed a job in the government. I landed the best job in public policy that I wished for. It was a liberal pocket of the government, the Open Government project led by then President Dmitry Medvedev, who now went completely bonkers. But back in the day, that was the right thing to do. I felt completely honored and very lucky. Except one thing. One thing happened. In 2014, Russia annexed Crimea and invaded eastern Ukraine. It was then when when Russia's war against Ukraine actually started, 9 years ago. It didn't start last year, it started 9 years ago, and it was a slow burn. It was also a slow burn of the Russian society and quite a steep backsliding from liberalization, democratization, and other improvements, other developments that everyone and I was hoping for, and I was hoping to be part of. I left the government and established the Social Sciences Lab, a charity, which was a project that united researchers from Russia willing to explore the Russian society and figure out how it works, how it worked, and not even how it can be improved, but just what it was like. We had people working on such subjects as, for example, the practice of dying in Siberia, or the practice of childbirth in Tver, which is a region squeezed in between two capitals, Moscow and St. Petersburg, with a massively thinning population. Another project considered female participation in politics in Dagestan, in a Muslim republic within the Russian borders in the Russian Northern Caucasus. We didn't incite any public discontent. We didn't propagate any change. The only thing we wanted to do, we wanted to study how things worked, and we wanted to break down seemingly monolithic structures that we were just given upon our birth, break them down into smaller pieces. And you know what happens? You know where the magic is? When you break it into smaller pieces, you realize that they're not that monolithic, and nothing is written in stone, and things can as well be done differently. And I think that's the reason, and that idea was quite explosive, and the Russian authorities went on war against social scientists in Russia. So the further history is a history of fear. January 2021, this is exactly when this festival of repressions happened in Russia. I remember the day very, very well. It was when Alexei Navalny, one of the prominent Russian opposition leaders, came back to Russia, came back to Moscow from Berlin, where he was cured after having been poisoned with a nerve agent in Russia. But he was immediately arrested at the airport, and he's still obviously behind the prison bars. But his brave and quite a bold action triggered lots of other actions held by the government against civil society organizations, against independent journalists, and against social scientists, academics working in social sciences. In January, I was also skiing in Siberia. You know, the ski resort in Siberia is situated right in the town where they have a prison colony. The windows of my bedroom in a chalet that we rented literally overlooked the penal colony number 4, and it's one of the famous ones actually because it's the remains of the Gulag system, of the Soviet system. And then I was thinking that, then when the fear of being imprisoned first crippled into my body, and I could feel it quite physically. But then I was thinking that resort town is just such a good metaphor for Russia in general. You're always near the prison walls. It is very, very easy to swap places, to get from one side of the wall to another side of the wall. You don't have to do anything even, because in this culture of impunity, they'll do it for you. And there's even a saying in Russian that just give us a man and we'll find a sentence for him. In March, I had dinner with my dad, and he told me he had cancer. I couldn't understand anything in his papers that he showed me, but I saw some figures, 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10, and those figures did not look promising to me. I experienced, on top of the fear of prison, I started fearing losing my father. In April, we were just outside St. Petersburg. We were organizing a school on academic writing for all of our researchers who brought their materials from the field, and we were there on a workshop to literally just organize the notes into coherent academic articles. But it was then when I experienced another type of fear for others. I walked, just when I arrived, my brilliant manager, Yulia, she was all pale, and she told me, "Julia, I can't do this anymore. I saw 2 men coming here on the cars with government plates. They were asking about us, and now they're watching us as we go through our everyday routine. I fear that if they come after my parents, if they search my parents' apartments, that will kill them. I quit. I can't do this anymore." And that was one of the biggest fears, actually. And the fear for others is much bigger than the fear for yourself, because you can risk yourself, but you can't risk the safety of your team and their families. In May, what happened? The prosecutor's office finally got back to us with their decision. They've been investigated us since January, and in May they decided to label our organization as a foreign agent organization. And this sounds ridiculous, but let me explain. It dates back to the Soviet times and to the Cold War times, when anything foreign was considered to be treacherous. So if you are a foreign agent, that means you're an enemy of the state, and that means that you're an enemy of the people, because you're subjected to a foreign propaganda. And this foreign agents law was passed in 2012, right after the first protest, when people took to the street to protest against unfair elections. And that is when the Russian authorities decided to label all those protesters as foreigners, effectively, because true Russian citizens, they can never be against the government. The stigma is frightening. It's more important than you probably think. You know, when you're stigmatized as an organization, you cannot find partnerships. You become toxic for other people to cooperate with. You cannot find followers, and it is actually quite effective. In June, I actually became a criminal, because the fund, the UK charitable foundation set up by Mikhail Khodorkovsky, another prominent opposition leader, 20 years ago, the fund was enlisted by the Russian Ministry of Justice, or the Ministry of Truth in Orwellian terms. It was enlisted as an undesirable organization. And cooperation with an undesirable organization made me liable to 4 to 6 years of imprisonment in Russia officially, if I ever get caught. July, my father died. My lawyers advised me to stay in Britain, and I missed his funeral. That was the fear of going home. That was the last bit, the last layer on top of all those layers of fear that finally cracked me down. I blanked out for several months, and my diaries are not helping me to restore. I don't remember what I was doing. So in February 2022, when the full-scale aggression of Russia against Ukraine started, and when the war finally got into the news, and when you finally heard about this war, by that time, every single opposition leader in Russia, or independent journalist, or academic working in social sciences, or any other activist was in exactly the same state in which I was. Devastated, either squeezed out of the country or arrested and sitting behind the prison bars. I discovered that there were still some people who went out to the streets to protest against the war, knowing that it will be consequential, fearing as much as I feared, as much as we all feared, everything, getting all those signals, those multiple signals for so many years. But there were still people going out to the streets. And every day there's some people, there's some tiny little protests that are happening. And that I admire. Obviously, the fear of physical extinction and the fear of being physically murdered, this is something that I am not anymore in a position to talk about. This is the story that Ukrainians are telling now. And I want to draw your attention to the diaries of Nastya Travkina, a Kiev-based journalist and philosopher who keeps her own diary of fear. And I want her to take it up from there. But what this whole history of pre-war prosecutions taught me about. It taught me that it is in Russian authorities, they practice deliberate politics of fear. And the instruments of this politics are selective justice, which is not justice at all, intimidation, harassment of activists, and so on and so forth. And that has been in practice for so many years. We can also see the connection with the Soviet times and the Gulag system that used exactly the same methods, but now they're just getting more modernized and digitalized. What this whole experience also taught me about is that bravery doesn't mean anything, right? The antidote to fear is honesty. When I'm honest in front of my diary, that's when I'm being brave. When I'm honest in front of the audience, in front of my students, that's when I'm being brave. When I'm honest in front of people I love, that's when I'm being brave. It is very easy. Bravery is a practice. It's an everyday practice. It's not something up in the sky. It's not an idea. Bravery is a practice, and the practice of honesty. Another political prisoner, and by the way, we have about 500 people in Russia who are political prisoners at the moment. So one of them, Alla Gutnikova, who's a student, just as you, just as many of you. She's already in Germany. She managed to escape, and she's a political refugee at the moment. But she already has a year of house arrest behind her shoulders. In her final speech in the court, she said, "Remember that fear eats your soul out." And you know what? We used to have TEDx talks in Russia, obviously before the war started last year. Now it's all closed down, all these initiatives. But TEDx has never been that popular. But what was popular, and those speeches that went viral in Russia and went powerful, were these court speeches. The speeches that unlawfully punished people would give before they go to serve their sentence. And you know why they are so popular and viral? Because they're honest. And honest ideas are the ideas worth spreading. Thank you.